am so excited to be in conversation with you both. This book is incredible. The film was a landmark in my young adulthood. In 1999, I was in high school, okay, very young. And it made me, like, I looked at the film and I was like, that's how I want to be when I'm a grown-up. That's the college I want to go to. I want to write books. I want to do all these things. And you set the example. So thank you for bringing that to life and writing this incredible book. So we're going to get into it. First of all, how did you two meet? Let's talk about that. How did this collaboration come together? And how did you divide things up? I mean, because it seems so seamless, but I know that's not the process.
Well, I knew that when I decided I was going to try to write a novel, that I was going to need help because I do have a day job, and I really wanted to try my hand at novel writing. It's something I've kind of fantasized about for a while, and to tell expansive stories. So I had no practice doing that. So, and I didn't want to have to learn on the fly. Mm-hmm. So, I wanted to recruit a writer, and I knew I needed a female writer because I'm a man, and we have a lot of I knew that we were going to be talking a lot about Jordan and Robin in this iteration, because it is the kind of the triangle with Harper, Robin, and Jordan, and so. I said, well, let me see if I can find somebody. And so my book agent, lined up a bunch of people, and I read a lot of material, and I got to Jane's, series, and I said, well, let me talk to her. And so we met over Zoom, mm-hmm. and I had questions. I don't remember what my questions were. I don't know, she can't remember what my questions were either. But I had some general questions like what's your working style? How do you feel about writing for men and all these kinds of things. And so then she had some questions, and so she asked this key question of me, which really kind of like caught my attention, mm-hmm. which was, do you want to win? Mm. Well, first she said, why are you doing this? And I was like, what do you mean? I want to try my hand at this form of writing. And right. She's like, yeah, but for what?
Yeah.
Right? I said, well, exercise muscle. She was like, do you want to win? Mm. And I was like, that made me kind of stand up, or right. sit up, and I was like, oh, what does that mean exactly? And it was about like, hey, like, are we trying to, go all the way with this thing? Are we trying to like make a cultural impact? And I'm like, yeah, I want to win. Hell yeah.
That's right.
Yes.
That was an important question for me because I had to ask basically the same question of myself when I started with Black Girls Must Die Exhausted. Mm-hmm. It wasn't obvious for me to start even writing fiction. I had other careers. I've been a lawyer. I've run businesses. I've done all kinds of things. And the reason why was the thing that pulled me through all the challenges, every late night, every moment of uncertainty, every plot twist that wasn't coming together. And so in asking him that, I think all of that was wrapped up in that moment, that the why, especially for our community, is so strong that we need representation. We need these stories. We need to see healing. We need to see examples of this pathway because it's been denied to us in the real world. So we can do so much within the pages, and that's what I wanted to be doing. And Malcolm's resounding yes to that question was wrapped up in all of that. And the collaboration journey reflected that yes, for sure.
Yeah, and I will say, I mean, it was also her wealth of experience, not just being, starting out as an author. She had such a journey of her life that I knew that was going to be fruitful for the narrative.
Can you talk about or share some examples of where that came to a head, especially when we're talking about Jordan, my favorite character? How did the female perspective, how did you sharpen it?
Well,
this last question
is that for me?
Yes, that's for you.
Well, there were moments where we flesh out the story. So the way we started out, we kind of fleshed out the story like train tracks. This is where this is going to go. This is each character's arc. This is where it's happening. And then when we get into crafting the scene, you have to think, what decisions would this character make or what would happen? And there are moments where I could say to Malcolm, I've been in this room or I've been in this situation with, and I don't think this is what they would say. I think they would say this, and we have a conversation about it. And that being in conversation like that, where, you know, Malcolm is the custodian of these characters. He
Yeah.
holds them pristine.
Yes.
And so being able to, you know, bring all of that into the gumbo and really make it authentic, you feel that in the book. I mean, everybody in their feedback has been saying it feels so cinematic, it feels immersive, it feels real, and the characters blossom from the page as if they're alive. That's the result of that kind of being in conversation around this.
What was the biggest difference for you, Malcolm, from writing a script to writing this novel? Did you see, because I felt that too. Like, I felt like it felt very accurate. It also just it felt just like a beautiful evolution of the characters where I could see it in my mind, but I don't know if that was because I have such an attachment to the visual masterpiece that you've created. So what was that like, taking it from, you know, from a film format to actually writing a novel?
What was it like? I mean, I welcome the challenge of it. It was actually freeing. Screenplay writing is a little restrictive in terms of everything you do, right? Like, you got to think about how many locations you're going to be, you know, shooting in. You have to think about how many characters you're going to be, you know, using. You have to think about how many days you're going to shoot, how many, you know, sets you're going to build. You know, you can start out, you know, in a way of like, okay, let's just do blue sky and let's do what we want. But then when the rubber hits the road, it's like, okay, you're not going to be able to afford that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So with the book, we're able to like really not only expand, you know, into these characters' minds and give them backstory that you didn't know about before,
Yeah.
and get into their inner thoughts like you didn't know before, but you get to go to 4 different cities where this book takes place. It takes place on 2 different continents.
Yeah.
You can't do that, you know, unless you have an Avengers budget, and they're not giving me an Avengers budget, you know, for Best Man. So, you know, it is really, it was actually very freeing to have that, and I actually, I think I've been looking forward to that kind of storytelling, just
Yeah.
because I haven't had the, you know, you can't put everything in every movie. You have to say, okay, well, save that for your next movie or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And so brevity has been a problem for me, you know, for my entire career. Like, my scripts are always too long. But
So you're perfect for novel writing. So we're expecting more and more.
I don't know about perfect, but you know, it's a playground I like to I'm enjoying, and you know, when you have somebody like Jane to, like, you know, help, you know, do a lot of push when I want to pull, and vice versa, it's pretty great.
Yeah, I mean, I also was just so impressed with just like the fullness of their lives. I'm gonna get to Harper, but you know, I feel like Jordan was in her soft life era, and you know, she's doing therapy, she's doing all the things that are needed. Can you, Jane, tell me about how you decided to just like build out her narrative and make this like such a restful place in her story?
Well, I think that Jordan's arc is really important, and,
Yes.
and particularly to me, because when in 1999,
Yes.
when I was in college, I was a senior in college, and that was one of the first representations. I'm kind of on the cusp of a generation where, you know, we were told no matter what your accomplishments are as a woman, your greatest accomplishment will be as someone's wife.
Yeah.
And so we saw somebody who challenged that narrative, and all of a sudden you see all these possibilities for your life. And I'm in my 40s, deep in my 40s, and haven't been married, don't have kids, but have had a very successful career. And so that's sort of still very unique, and Jordan is still unique in that way to show us what does that look like, you know? And it was very refreshing to write her pathway, because I think the other side of that, you know, it's great. You have this corporate achiever, right? But the other side of that is, what does it cost?
Yes.
And when you give all you've got to your job in corporate America and you don't get back what the promise was,
Right.
what do you do then? Most people stay, but Jordan Armstrong left.
Yep.
And she chose herself. So it was really important for me to see, you know, what this journey looked like, and what that path looked like was an uncommon tread, you know?
Yeah.
So it was great to work with Malcolm to mine his repertoire of all things Jordan Armstrong, and then bring that forward into something that we all can learn from, basically. So
Yeah.
it's very exciting, because I started out as a Jordan Armstrong fan. I guess we could talk about Robin too, because I think I did
Yeah.
not start out as a Robin fan.
Okay. Can we get show of hands, Robin fans? Okay, thank you. We got some.
I know most folks are Team Jordan, and I understand that. You know, I think one of the things that in you know, creating this novel was that, you know, there were a lot of people at the end of Best Man final chapters who were very upset with Robin, right? And including Jane.
Yes.
And you know, I wanted a chance to expand upon her story,
Yeah.
and you know, get into her healing journey, and to what, you know, again, like Jordan did, Robin chose herself.
Yes.
You know, and you know, because Harper had often chosen himself.
Yes,
You know,
yes.
throughout the marriage. So it was like, okay, you know what, this is not reciprocal, and I'm going to go and do what I want to do for me, what's going to serve me. And I really wanted her to, you know, have a chance to kind of defend herself in
Yeah.
this iteration of the story.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, by the end of it, I don't know, it's a bit of a convert. I mean, she's still Team Jordan, but she's made room for Robin. Like Robin
is
has
that
made room.
girl.
Yeah, she really is. But what is so amazing is like you start to understand, and I don't know if it is just like I'm no longer in high school and you have some lived experience. Clearly, the audience is nodding and yes, I mean, like we can relate. You know, this book has allowed us to grow up and experience these things in real time and have a new understanding and empathy for her as a person.
Yeah, and I think when we started, I was not a Robin fan for
Yeah.
sure, and Malcolm was like, "So, oh, is that so?" And I knew there was going to be a challenge behind that because you know he wanted to show it was a very complex thing that we observed at the end of final chapters. That was a very complex thing that I think we don't necessarily again see in life, and this is what literature allows us to do is to explore the underexplored areas of our psyche as humans and show us other possibilities if it's really good literature to really dive into that aspect of our humanity. And we saw something very, very rare and human
Yes.
in that decision. And so what we were able to do in the narrative is build that out. And as you read the book and you'll read Robin's story, you get to understand what she went through and how much courage that took. And how much courage it took to walk away from Harper, how much courage it took to establish a life in Accra, and you get to go to Accra. Actually, Malcolm did go to Accra to build out that experience. But I look forward to all of you getting to know Robin as I got to know her, and kind of formulating opinions from there, and allowing her to show another avenue of healing that we don't often get to see, which is sometimes you just have to walk away from everything.
Yep. Yeah. Can we talk about just like all the emotional parts of this book and also the physical parts of this book? So backstage, very candidly, we were just talking about who wrote what scenes, in particular the sex scenes. So can we elaborate on that? Because they are very steamy, very well done. I can't wait for you all to experience it. How did you divide those portions of the novel?
You know, as Jane said, we did a lot of outlining at first. And it was funny too because, like, you know,
I need details of the outline.
And I don't know if you can handle those details because the outline may have been spicier than the actual outcome of the novel. But I will say that we did a lot of, like, you know, development on the outline. And I remember when we got to the end of it, you know, she was like, "Oh, this is way better than the first outline." And I was like, "Oh, really?" Yeah, I don't know. I don't tend to do a lot of outlines. I mean, I've definitely not done one for a book. But I knew what I wanted to say. I knew that we wanted to, you know, be as full as possible. So when it came to like those scenes that you're talking about, we got pretty explicit, you know, about it. And then, you know, it's at certain points, you know, Jane was like, "Oh, maybe that's too much, or maybe let's try to soften this here, or like push this here, blah 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 blah." And so like, with every scene in the novel, it was like, okay, or every chapter, she would write a pass. I would write a pass on a different chapter, and we'd switch. And we'd say, okay, like, how you feeling about this? Oh, no, this is good. And, you know, obviously, at the end of it, I was, I'd have to give it, like, the the Malcolm Lee, best man,
Malcolmization.
the comb over just to make sure, okay, like this rings true to these characters. So yeah, I mean, who wrote which scene? It was a combo, but some weighed heavier than others. She did the more nasty ones. What? Much more explicit. Come on, your dad's not here. Don't worry. Your dad's not here.
Yeah.
Well, I do want to say that because they're grown. I also think it's so beautiful because it's like they're grown, and it's
Yeah,
just
these are adults.
Yeah, these are we're grown, and so I think that part of showing that intimacy that like in your
Right.
50s, that is so essential and it's very much part of your life. It doesn't disappear. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, and I think if you've read any of my work, okay, I don't shy away from the bedroom scenes. It's not like they close the door and then.
Oh, it's so
the
funny too. You
morning
always
came.
wanted to do it, like have it done in the bedroom too. I was like,
Oh, yeah, that is
They can have it
true.
right in the living
Yeah.
room. They can have it there. And she was like,
Yeah, Malcolm
they should
did-
walk to the living. Shouldn't they go to the bedroom? I was like,
Now
for
you
what?
told on yourself.
For what? Like if it's getting hot and heavy, like who's going? Who's? Oh, wait a minute. Let's just do. Come on.
Well, yeah.
It's a book, right? So like sometimes things just heat up, right?
No, it's hot. It got hot. Yeah, there were some new horizons. Let's just say.
I'm just now remembering that. She was like, well, shouldn't they go to the bed? No.
Yeah. You.
She's gonna stand up on the couch and do it.
I know. So yeah, we had to.
Let's try it.
We're
Let's
like,
see.
We're like, can you balance on one foot like that? Yeah. So yeah, that is how this went down. So you will see this in the book, but it was a lot of fun. But it's anatomically correct, okay? So, but it's so important. I feel like, especially in this day and age, to show well-rounded humans. And when you are talking about people in their late 40s, 50s, I mean, they have sexual personalities by this point, and that's part of knowing the character. So it's a technical feat from a craftsmanship perspective to write a sexual scene or to show a character's sexual expression and to A, make it part of the story, B, make it part of the character development, so you really are seeing who this person is by way of this way of expressing themselves and how are they engaging and how is it different in this moment versus with this moment with this person. So I think it's very rich. I hope it's steamy and evocative. I hope it's very sexy, but it's also there's an intellectualism to it.
Yeah.
And a deep character richness to it that I hope it really does make you feel something closer and more connected to the characters.
Yeah, I mean, and that's true. Like the characterization of each of those scenes are very different. They're different characterizations of that expression, and I'm very proud of that. We were able to accomplish that, with character and identity.
Yeah. Another part of this book where we all know, I feel like Black women have embraced this fold of characters. The men are so beautifully centered, and their friendship just like sets a beautiful example for folks watching. But in this book, something felt different and felt richer. It showed just like more depth and the layers of when challenging things happen, because a lot of challenging things happen, but how to resolve them, how to work through conflict. And I love the brotherhood. Can you talk about just like that transition and bringing it again from the film into this book and extending the life of it?
I mean, that's kind of the impetus
Yeah.
behind the Best Man franchise, right? Like, it's about Black men. And I think a lot of that gets lost because the Black women are so in such support of the Best Man franchise that I think like the brothers feel a little bit like, I don't know if that's for me, until they look at it and they're like, oh, that is for me. I know those dudes. And that's what it was about. Like from its inception, I was inspired, to tell a story about 4 Black men who all went to college together, who were full human beings, who were all very different, but shared this common experience of going to college together, and that just continues through all the Best Man iterations, and we really got, so to me, it's just a continuation of the crux of what this story is about, and it's about brotherhood. I mean, I was trying to tell the story, it was very much inspired by Waiting to Exhale, where I didn't think the men in that were full characters, but that was Terry McMillan's, and then Forrest Whitaker's depiction of that group because they're centering the women. So I wanted to center the men and make sure that they were full, because the educated black men that I saw on screen, both big and small, were just, dudes I didn't recognize.
Yeah.
Very stiff, checking their ethnicity at the door. They somehow you got to speak the King's English and never look back.
Right.
And that was not my experience going to Georgetown University. And so, that was, that was a great inspiration, my friendships, and also just saying I need to see the people that I can relate to on screen. And we definitely continue it in the book. I mean, and the guys are different now, right? Murch is not the same guy. He's not the pushover anymore.
Yeah.
Murch is going to hold you accountable.
Right.
Right? And Harper's trying his best. He's getting there.
What's going on?
Have patience with the brother. Listen, he definitely at this point in his life, he's post-divorce. He's very successful. He got Pulitzer Prize. He's got financial success, but he is alone right now. He's not lonely, but he's alone. He's a little outside in this
definitely not
book.
lonely.
He's a little outside.
He's enjoying his bachelor life right now, but
That's not what I was expecting in 1999.
well, he's a little, trying to find his way. He's untethered, and it does not fit in his friend group the way he used to. He feels a little kicked out of his life without Robin, and wondering now, did I make a mistake? Should I have chosen differently?
Yeah.
And so he's trying to figure out how he fits back into his life that he's helped to build.
And I think one of the other great things about the collaboration, it's kind of rare still to see a male and female writing partnership in this space, especially as it pertains to relationships, which I thought was so invigorating, because when we were, you think that something should go one way, and I'm like, yeah, and I think this, and Malcolm's like, men do not act like that. And he's like, they have some kind of pride. I'm like, what?
There's women that write for men, and then they always somehow they're perfect somehow, or they're really shitty, And I'm just there's got to be a middle ground here somewhere, right? Yeah. So let me give you some perspective. And by the way, I got a lot of perspective from Jane too.
Yeah, so I think you see that in the pages. I thought that was so cool, because we had to actually fight out the relationships on behalf of the characters in the writing. And so you'll see that actual tension of the writer, of the characters in the writing, because it's real. We have to bring our perspectives to that, the conflict, and resolve it. So I think what's great for readers, and what I've always wanted to embody in my books, is it's more than just an entertainment experience. You can actually learn from it. You can get ideas about how to resolve conflict, or get new ideas about relationships and relating to other people. And I think one of the things in particular for this franchise pertaining to the men is that, at least as I can speak for myself as a woman, I feel like I haven't always envisioned men changing. And so
The universal.
and so to see the evolution.
We are capable.
I know that was news to me. No, I'm just, but to see that this is how the evolution happens, and this is how, as a woman, you can support that evolution. I think you kind of get let into a room that you wouldn't necessarily be in, and so that's what's really special about this.
No, I think it's also in line with the First Best Man movie. That there's a 10-page scene with the 4 guys are playing cards, and I know women were like. Tuned in. I mean, the fellas were just, oh yeah, that's us. That's us all day, right? So she's right. And when we get into the minds of Harper, and look, he's a flawed character. All these characters are flawed, and and sometimes they make mistakes, and that's human. And that's always been the mission, was to humanize Black people and normalize Black life in America.
Yeah. It feels like I love the fact that the subtitle is Unfinished Business, because it's okay, we are getting into it. And this is the first of many. Can we talk about just what is coming down? I know y'all just got your books, but this is a very rare opportunity for me. So I want to know what's coming up? Are there Easter eggs in this book? Are there just like, what was left? I'm basically trying to get the advanced copy.
I understand. I see where you're going. I see where you're going.
So what can we, for a trilogy 2 and 3, where are we going?
Well, just so you know, when this was pitched, this first book was supposed to chronicle the inner lives and dedicate each chapter to the POVs of Harper, Robin, and Jordan.
Yeah.
And the next book was going to do Lance, his new bride Jasmine, Quentin, Murch, Candace, Shelby. And then the third book would do the same thing, would expound upon those 3 characters, all the characters. But as fate would have it, and in the development of the book, we thought we would wrap the story up, in book 1 with Harper, Robin, and Jordan. But that is not the case.
No.
It is a little bit of a cliffhanger at the end, so that those stories will thread through at least book 2 and likely book 3. Yeah, yes. And then we were gonna make room for the other characters' POVs and dedicate chapters to them. And there are Easter eggs. They're very, very subtle, though.
Okay. All right.
And the great thing too about writing this, what Malcolm was saying, things change.
Yeah.
Yes.
Even at the very last minute, in the end, we thought it was going to go one way in the outline. It was we're like, oh, okay. And then we got to where the characters were, and it just changed. It's like they had their own lives.
It's true.
So how does that happen? Do you have like a moment where you're just like, you turn to Malcolm, you're like, no, this is it. So like, what is this like pivotal moment that makes you want to switch the characters?
I don't know that it's a particular moment. There was a lot of discussion. So I think it was after well, first of all, after draft 1, I went to Ghana, and then when I came back, like Robin's story was, it wouldn't completely change, but it was very much enhanced.
Oh, okay.
And so things happened there, and then certain things that happened with Robin, it was like, oh, well, this has to happen,
Yeah.
right? And this has to happen with this person, and then so when those things happen, and then when we get, I'm trying not to spoil anything. I'm not spoiling anything.
No spoilers.
So
No
like
spoilers.
when you get to we got the end of I think draft 2, Jane and our editor Chelsea was like, there's got to be such and such has to happen, or such as should happen, or he should be doing blah blah blah. Yeah. And I was just like, nah, that's not that. We don't know. that doesn't make any sense. Well, he's got to do this. And they're like, no, you really. So I was like, and so these are things that happen. And Jane is correct. When you're creating the story, when you're creating the characters, they are telling you where they want to go.
Yeah.
And when you give them certain challenges, or you say, okay, like what am I going to do? What if this happened? That's the biggest question you can ask in writing. And it's like, it's what if, right? And by the way, same thing happens in screenplays. In the original Best Man, Robin was never coming to the wedding.
Oh.
Yeah, right. She was never coming to the wedding. And when I was writing it, or when I written it and I was developing for Universal Pictures, there was something that I felt, okay, we're good, we're done. And so they were like, well, it's something's not quite coalescing, because basically what was going to happen was Harper was going to be there. He was going to get his ass kicked. The book was going to get out, but he would still get Lance married. And he'd learn from his lesson, and he would say, oh, I'm not going to be so uptight, and I'm going to ask Robin to move in with me. Right. Right. That even like your face is like, right? So, but I thought, okay, this is great, right? But somebody said, one of the producers said, hey, what if Robin comes to the wedding? I said, no, forget that. That's stupid, right? But then you have to put pressure on your characters and put them in a situation where it's like, okay, what you gonna do, man? What are you gonna do, and what is this gonna tell you about the person that you're with?
Yeah.
So that was very pivotal, in the writing of that. And then the same thing happened here with this book when Chelsea and Jane were asking the critical questions, and I was just like, let me think about that and let me see what I can do there, right? And then it made a lot of sense. And really, I mean, we were on the phone and on Zooms. Like, I was in South Africa scouting a movie. She was in LA, and I'd scout all day, and it was probably like midnight, and she was like, it was like maybe like, let's see, if it's midnight, so it's like 2 o'clock in the afternoon, her time. So we're on the phone, like figuring out, what to write and how to write and try to finish this book, that was in December.
Yeah.
So it was a lot back and forth.
It was very intense. And one of the things from my perspective, I mean, going into this, I had so much reverence for The Best Man and what Malcolm has done. And even, my previous career was in entertainment, and one thing I understand is how difficult it is to maintain the quality level and the caliber of representation that Malcolm has over 25 plus years with this franchise. And held the standard high, held the standard high. So in going in and respecting that, and then also knowing and knowing you have to push, and when you really have, and sometimes you have to push hard because Malcolm's gonna hold on to it, and I'm so gave me so much more, even more appreciation for the custodianship that he's had for this series and franchise and legacy, and also understanding, and finding a way as a creative and to help evolve this and when to push and where to push. So that was really interesting in terms of learning about, this is my first collaboration, but understanding the dynamics of the collaboration and where those moments when you just can't let it slide. I'm like, hey, I know we talked about this. You said no, but can we revisit this one more time?
Yeah, there were a couple of those conversations. I was just like, oh, God.
One time he was like, I said yes to everything, but not this.
And there's certain things yeah, right. That's really true. Yeah, no, that's so funny. It's so funny. Somebody was saying about Capricorns. I'm a Capricorn. They were like, no, they'll agree to like 90% of things, but the 5%, I said no. Yeah. We're not crossing that line.
I know.
And then there were a couple of those times.
I'm not going to put y'all on blast, but now I want to know your charts, your birth signs. I need to know because I'm also a Capricorn, so I see that.
All right. Okay.
Yes. Okay, I know we have questions in the audience, so we're going to get the mics ready. Raise your hand so we can start getting questions from the audience. And I'm going to ask one more question. I really want to, how does it feel with the reception? Everyone has been so welcoming, so warm. Y'all just came from Essence. You're now here in D.C. What does it feel like talking to folks about this new project? How does it feel?
Well, I have to say, it's great because, people are showing up because they love this franchise. They love this story. And, look, in large part is due to, the actors that embody these roles, right? Yeah. And people, they're a very good-looking cast, and people like to come see them when they're coming making appearances. And the fact that people are out here, without them, because Morris is not coming tonight. Okay? Nia Long's not walking through the door, fellas. Okay? And, Sanaa's not here, neither is Tay. So it's just like the fact that people are coming out to support, this literary work is very flattering. So it's very exciting for me.
We want to see you. You look good too.
Well, I thank you. I thank you. At least a lot of my peeps are here. A lot of my Georgetown peeps are here.
I think for something that was so well established, to see people experience the novel form of it, because now it's a different form, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And there's expansion to the stories and expansion to the characters, and to hear people. First of all, it's 400 plus pages, right? We gave y'all a year's worth of work in 500 pages, and to hear people be like, I read it in 24 hours.
Yeah.
I read it in 24 hours. I read it in 48 hours. I couldn't put it down. I love it. I'm also like, oh man, that was a whole year's worth of, but I love.
I'm glad they're reading it fast. I don't want to be like, when am I going to get through this goddamn thing? I'd much rather read. It's just, what's so funny though? It's just like, when I heard that people were binge watching Best Man Final Chapters. They were watching it like over and over. They were not only watching it once through, they were watching it multiple times through. And I'm like, who has that kind of time? That's like 24 hours of TV, right? To watch it like multiple times, that's crazy. But so it's great that people are embracing those who have read it thus far are embracing it, and they're reading it very quickly. They're calling it a page turner. They say they can't put it down. I love that.
And the cinematic effect, and I love seeing the people, because it's a very high technical writing craftsmanship thing to be able to make something unfold in your mind and to trigger the senses in that way. There's a lot that goes into that to make the words just fall away and it becomes seamless, and all of a sudden it blooms into an experience that you're in. That, to hear people reflect that back, the cinematic effect, the fact that they feel like they're spending time with the characters, that is so exciting to me to hear, because that's what we intended. And we're just, if people get 24 hours of rest and escape from the climate that we're in, if we can provide that, if it's 24, if it's 48 hours, then that
Don't be a hero. It can be
worth
4 days.
Yeah.
It can be
Take all the
5. Take your time.
But this is meant to be a moment of ease. You know, it's offered with love. I think in this climate that we're in, especially for us, you know, where we're in our community and our culture, we need these places to rest. We need to read these stories of healing. You know, we need to spend time with these people and have these works that were created with this kind of offer at this level of excellence and custodianship. So I love hearing
so
that.
much love.
Yes, there's a lot of love.
That's awesome. So I know, where's our person with the mic and the question? All right. All right, let's do it. So someone raise their hand over here.
I see one right here.
Okay, that's perfect. And we want to just remember, we're going to ask a question.
Hi, this has
Hello.
been great. Thanks. I'm Shelby, Catherine's daughter. But I think you knew that. Anyways,
Hi, Shelby.
it is, you know when you watch a TV show and it's hard to separate the actor from the character? And so now I'm wondering, like, do they feel that with the book? Like, have the actors and actresses read the book and, like, felt like, oh no, Harper would have never done this? Like, do they have that, or were they consulted any during the process? Or, like, what does that look
There's
like?
no consultation. You know, they're not involved. I mean, they all have copies of the book, right? You know, Morris has read, Tay, Harold, they love it. Yeah, they gave blurbs, exactly. The rest of the cast has the book. These are the characters that came from me, right? So they just happen to embody them, and they embody them so well that they do have ownership over those characters, just not legal ownership. You know, they did their job, right? And they got paid, so you know. and so like it's you know, you guys are at an advantage with reading this book of having, you know, picturing the people in your brains already. They're already, you know what they sound like, you know what they look like. You probably know what they're gonna, what the kind of clothes they're gonna have on, how they smile, how they, you know, what their expressions are. So it's fantastic that you have that as a, you know, a backdrop. And there's some new characters. You can cast who you want in those roles.
Yeah, there's going to be one that I know the ladies are going to want to cast for sure. And those
Yeah, Robin's new love interest.
Well, one thing I would say, in from my perspective on that question, when we first started working together, I wanted to know in terms of like because you know there's so much humor and it's just so spontaneous. It seems like I was like, oh my gosh, there was so much improvisation on set. Probably, how are we gonna wrap this in? I thought it was gonna be a bigger challenge, and I asked Malcolm, hey, how much of this was improvised in what we see in the movies? And he was like, it was all basically on the page. Very little, very, very little was improvised. And it opened my mind to what the page could do. Because I realized, wow, that humor is wrapped. So when you read the book, you'll understand, you will hear the characters exactly as you know them. The humor is that you will laugh out loud. I've read some of the reviews. People do laugh out loud. I'm not just saying that. So you'll feel that, you'll hear that. So the page can do a lot more than you would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny too. A lot of people think that, you know, the stuff was improvised, but a lot of times that's a testament to, you know, rehearsal time and, you know, me being very clear about who these characters are, you know, and delivering that message to the actors. and they're so good at interpretation that they can do what is on the page. And I was, for my first movie, I was like very, very, very restrictive. I was like, nope. You got to say this, right? Don't change this word because there's a purpose for it, right? So like I was very much like, no, don't change my words.
Capricorn.
Well, I've loosened up over the years, a little.
So our second question.
I like your shirt.
Hi. Yes, everyone liked my
It
shirt.
says
I
Harper,
received
Robin, and
it
Jordan on the
in
shirt.
New York at the Schomburg, where I met Mr. Lee and his family, as well as Jane.
You met the real Mr. Lee, my father. I'm Malcolm.
Yeah, and I met his dad as well. Yes, I did. So thank you for being here. I just have a question for you. Like, your characters, are they based on your friendships, your families, members, etc.? Because you touch on so many different facets of life, to include dating, marriage, birth, divorce, aging parents, as well as health issues. So that's just my question. And thanks again.
Well,
was in New York.
we gave some away at our inaugural event in New York.
So I'm a model
more of them.
for
We may
the
we
Schomburg.
may produce a few more.
So you all have to, when next time he's at New York in Schomburg, you have to go.
Well, I'm not gonna be going to the Schomburg to hawk tail T-shirts. I'll tell you that right now. That ain't happening. But we'll see. In terms of like, listen, there's a lot that I'm drawing from my own experience. A lot that I'm drawing from the experience of my friends. And it started here in D.C. at Georgetown with the friendships that I built, right? And so, like, I can't say there's any one character that's like, oh, I'm lying. Jordan's in the room tonight. No, I'm playing. See, I got y'all. No. I will just say, like, yes. What's funny is a lot of people who went to school with me were like, oh, well, that's. You based that on me. And I was like, no, I did not. I wasn't thinking about you. There were other people. And then a lot of them is combinations of people. And then as life goes on, again, when there was talk of the first Best Man, they wanted to do a sequel right away. And I said, no, I don't want to be a one-trick pony, number one. Number two, I have to live some life. I let these characters live some life, and then maybe we revisit it like 10 years later. And so, yeah, there's certain things I'm drawing from, of course, like, and then there are things that you want to just infuse into the story. Because here's the deal, like, I was very intentional about making a commercial movie when I wrote The Best Man. I wasn't even trying to direct The Best Man when I wrote it. It was I was gonna write something so commercial that I could sell it and make another movie. And so then the same thing happened with Best Man Holiday, where I wasn't working for a while, right? Times were a little bit rough. And so, and everything was about branding in 2012. And it was like, okay, so what's my brand? It's The Best Man. It's time to get a sequel. And I'd been like tinkering with an idea of like, okay, I'm gonna set it in the holidays. It's not gonna be a wedding. It's gonna be a funeral. It's gonna be very much like The Big Chill. And there's going to be a football game, and there's going to be, Harper will be on harder times, and, there's going to be, fertility issues. And so, I want to bring all the things, because these are things that are happening in my life, in my peers' life, that's like, wow, like, these are things that, like, I don't, you don't necessarily, think that's going to happen, but they do.
And I think we have time for a couple more, two more. We want to do two more, so we have another person. Yeah, we want to use the mic.
We
because
like
we're
the mic.
recording. Yeah.
Mic sound nice.
Hello, hi, Vanessa McNair. Thank you so much for being here, Mr. Malcolm DeLee and Ms. Jane Allen. My question is, thank you so much for writing this novel. I love to read, but as we know, many people aren't reading these days. So to make it easier, have y'all thought about including a podcast to talk about these topics as we go through the book and have our own experiences too?
They want to hear more of your voice. Okay, but maybe I'll expand that question too. Just what other mediums? Like, could
She's
this
an actress,
be
too.
podcast? Could it be a play? How other ways can this novel live?
we have been talking about a podcast.
Yes.
So you know, I think a lot of we're doing these events and getting to hear from people and hearing the questions. You know, it's interesting to hear what people want to know about.
Yeah.
And I also, in the process of working with Malcolm, I had so many questions. When we first started, I was like, okay, so wait a minute, what actually happened? And did Harper ever cheat on Robin? And you know, so I think there's a lot that these books cover in terms of life conversations, but also things behind the scenes. You know, there's just so much in that library in your head, you know, that people, we love this franchise so much. So, you know, that there's a lot of avenues for, but one of the conversations we have been having is a podcast.
Well, I will say that the intention here was to write a book, right?
Yeah.
And then to write 2 more after that.
Yeah.
You know, this was not, you know, an opportunity to say, okay, I'm going to write this book and I'm going to turn it into a television show or turn it into a movie.
Right.
When I came to Jane, I was like, I want to be literary. I want to be, you know, I want to use English language. I want to use good words, you know, to describe what everything that's happening here, right? And like make it an experience, a reading experience. I don't want to just, I mean, and it is a cinematic experience, and it's not something that I think it would be very difficult to mount a movie or a television show based on this.
But maybe not a podcast.
Podcast definitely possible.
Who reads the audiobook? Because I love audiobooks. Do we recall? I need to look it up.
It's not out yet.
Oh, it's not out. Okay.
It's coming out on the 15th.
All right. Mark your calendars, 15th, because I'm listening to this also feels like a podcast. But we have one more question. Oh, 2. My apologies. All right. So we have gentleman right here.
Hi. Oh, sorry. Hi, I just want to say thanks for creating this franchise. I've been a fan of it since I was 5 years old when the first installment
5?
came out. Yeah.
Now, who let you watch this movie at 5 years old? That was you?
I saw it. Hey, I saw it with my fam, though. I saw it with the fam, though. Yeah. It was great. Yeah, it stuck by me ever since, though. But to be honest, ever since I watched those characters, it made me feel like something. Because it made me feel good to see a lot of us portraying successful people. And for example, like Jordan's character, I mean, she's always been the baddest. I mean, she started out working for BET, then moved on to NBC. And to be honest, I think Jordan and Harper were made for each other because they had. It's true though, because they had a lot of good chemistry. They know each other since college. They always had each other's backs.
Is that your question?
Is that your question? Yeah. You just had your
Do they wind up together? You got to read the book.
Okay. All right.
You're going to find out.
All right.
Yeah.
So this will be our last question. No pressure. All right.
It's okay. Good evening. It's wonderful to see y'all. I don't have a question. I want to say thank you for what you did for Robin. It inspired so many of me and my girlfriends to think about things differently. And you gave her the courage to make choices that, you know, the book is the best man and we love the fellas, but you let her shine in her own light. And I love that. And I just wanted to say thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you for that comment.
Give it up for Malcolm D. Lee, Jane Allen, Gloria Edom, and the DC Public Library. Yes, yes, yes.